You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. It's your host, Brian Fullerton, here hanging out with you guys. And today we have a guest interview for you guys. I love doing guest interviews with so many of you guys that listen into the show. A lot of you guys have been reaching out via DM on Instagram and want to tell your startup story. Well, today we have a guest interview with Aaron Strunk. He's down from Marion, Illinois. He's 31 years old. And Aaron, welcome to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate being on. Something I don't normally do on a regular basis, but I like sharing my story. So,
amen to that, man. Are you guys getting rain down there? You guys mowing? What's the season looking like for you guys right now?
Today is a rain day. Forecasted tomorrow, rain day as well. So, which is needed in our line of business, but we're getting that much needed rain right now. So,
amen to that. I think I was just joking before we hit record. I think we get what you guys get like the day before. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
Whatever you guys get, it makes our way to us in the Plain States and Michigan and Illinois, and then I think it goes east. You know what I mean, to Pennsylvania and New York. So it's kind of funny. I'm like, hey man, how was the rain? Was there tornadoes? Like, is it bad? And you're like, no, dude, it'll blow over. So it's kind of funny there. But hey, let's do this. I'm really excited about doing another interview with you guys that listen to the show. So many of you guys listen in and are new listeners, and it's all about Lawns Lessons Life here. Our goal is to help you guys grow a more successful lawn and landscape business with all the content that we put out. And Aaron has actually been listening since day one on the podcast, which is crazy cool, and we super appreciate that support. So Aaron, why don't you just give these guys a quick snapshot about where your business is right now and what things are looking like, and then we're going to hear a little bit more about your startup story and what you guys got going on today.
All right. Well, start off. My name is Aaron Strunk. If you question what Strunk is, it's spelled S-T-R-U-N-K. Me and Brian was discussing that. He said he didn't want to butcher it. I go, I won't be upset. I won't be upset if you do. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
Right.
I am the owner and operator of Aaron's Lawn Care. I've been in business roughly about 5 years, 3 years full time. Stepped away. I started this as a way to earn more money. It wasn't quite making enough of the job that I was working. Sure. Even though I was making $23 an hour, it just wasn't quite enough in the end to keep my wife to stay at home with our two kids.
Okay.
Started it off working mowing a few lawns. Realized I actually loved it. Not sure why. You're working outside in the heat, sweating, getting nasty, but for some reason I realized it was more than just a job. It was more than just bringing in income. And so I eventually took the step. We can go in depth deeper on that as we get through the story.
Yeah.
But it was a big leap of faith, and I'm here now, mowing 5 days a week, working 6 days a week, doing landscaping on the sixth day when the rain doesn't delay me like this week. Most likely, I'll be mowing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, playing catch up for these past 2 days of, today and tomorrow of not being able to mow.
Yeah. Well, we're right there with you, brother. We like I said, we get the rain right after you. So it's funny. You get the rain day today and tomorrow, and literally at the time of this recording, they're calling for rain tomorrow evening, and then through the next day, Thursday, for us at the time of this recording, which is really funny because I'm like, oh boy, it's coming. So I think we're both gonna be working some Fridays and Saturdays. How about that?
Unfortunately, so.
I love it, man. Never a dull moment around here. Well, hey, let's do this really quick. As a lot of you guys know that listening to the show, we really appreciate bringing the content to you guys Monday, Wednesday, Friday without fail, and that takes a commitment. And so to do that, to have the production, to keep on that kind of a schedule, we have one of the best people that we know as an audio engineer, and that is Marty, Mr. Producer down in the ATL. He's the one that quarterbacks the show. So a lot of you guys that always DM me want to get on the show, you might have to go through him. He's the gatekeeper. You know what I'm saying? So just having some fun here. But let's do this really quick. Let's kick it over to Marty. We're going to hear from all the show sponsors, updates, announcements, and then we're going to get back to Aaron here and hear a little bit more of his startup story here coming up in just a quick second.
Ratings and reviews. Each week, we take a minute to highlight your guys' reviews of the show.
And our first review comes from Jake Bot and Joe Bro. They say motivating and inspiring to the small lawn service community. I own and operate J&B Lawn Services in Colorado, and I've been in a rut on how to grow my business. Through this podcast, I've learned so many ways to properly price, service, and grow my business with the right mentality. Brian is an inspiration for many people, and it is such a great opportunity to listen to the podcast while I'm doing my work to keep my motivation up and to keep grinding every day. SK Lawn Care and Landscaping writes, this podcast is awesome. The best content and inspiration on Apple Podcasts by far. By the way, my name is Sam. I'm 18 years old. I'm also from Mr. Producer's hometown of Huntsville, Alabama. Hey, Sam, do all the high school kids still go up to Montesino Mountain to make out? Ah, man, some good times, good memories. I just started my own lawn care company here, and I'm currently at 13 accounts in my first 4 months of business. It's all thanks to this podcast and Brian's YouTube channel. I'd love to get on an episode and tell my story if possible and spread some motivation to other young guns in the industry like myself. Well, Sam, since I'm now apparently the gatekeeper, one of these days I'll throw a Venmo link down in the show description and you can start the application process that way. Hoppy3777, what is it with the prison numbers? So Hoppy says, love how down to earth you are. You are a very centered guy and humble. You're a good guy. Thanks for all the great info. I'm getting my lawn care business up and running for next season. I am ready to finally be my own boss, and my parole officer approves. So that's nice. 6'8" says, love listening to Brian's podcast. So much valuable information. I've been in business now 26 years in sunny Florida and started part-time in lawn care while working full-time in law enforcement. We had our first child, so I started doing lawn care so that the wifey could stay home with the newborn. Man, do I have some stories over the years. I retired from law enforcement as a detention deputy in 2003. Now full-time in lawn care for 18 years. While working 2 jobs, I went to college, got a degree in horticulture management, started my business driving a 4-door Oldsmobile Delta 88. Now that was a roomy car. Towing a trailer, I had an MTD riding lawnmower, a curve shaft pull-on weed eater, an MTD edger, and no blower. Actually used to use the weed eater to blow off everything along with a push broom. Wish this information was available years ago.
Want us to read your review next? Let us know how we're doing, and we might just read your review on next week's show.
Calling all landscape pros who want to get serious about healthy turf and a healthier bottom line. It's time to throw down new innovations. Built on 50 years of proven agronomic proficiency, Let's Go fertilizers, control products, seed, and equipment are engineered to produce more resilient turf. We'll continue to bring new technologies, so no matter the day, you'll always bring your A game. Upgrade and outperform with Let's Go. Visit site1.com/Let's-Go today to learn more.
Hey guys, Paul Jameson here, the author of Cut That Grass and Make That Cash. You're not listening to no raggedy podcast. You're listening to a great podcast. It's all about lawns, lessons, and life. It's the Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
All right, guys, and we are back. And again, always appreciate Marty bringing you guys all the show announcements and updates. By the way, Aaron, you said you listened to the Green Industry podcast with Paul Jameson, right? That's how you found us?
That is correct. That's the first green or lawn care podcast I ever started listening to.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this. Okay. So if you've been listening to Paul for a couple minutes, there's this like rumor out there that Marty, Mr. Producer, wasn't a real person. Did you feel that way, or were you one of the believers? Shoot me straight.
I don't know. Like I was torn on it. Like he always seemed like he was talking to somebody, but you'd never heard the person that he was talking to. I mean, it would make sense. I honestly, I questioned if he was true or not, but at the same time, he did talk about a radio background quite a bit. So I was like, maybe he does have a producer.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I've got to come with a budget, these people ain't free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And So it was a question. It was like, is he real? Is he not? You know, Paul does work at radio. You know, has worked at a radio station. Maybe he knows someone.
Sure.
You know, there was a possibility.
Well,
So,
we owe Paul an apology, you know, behind the scenes and in front, because I was like, Paul, you don't have a producer, man, and I wasn't like saying he couldn't afford one or have one, you know, it wasn't like that.
Right.
But I think we're all just being a butt. We're just like, Paul, like who is the other person on the other side of that takeout window? Because like you said, we had never heard from him, right? So anyway,
exactly.
Shout out to Mr. Producer. He is a real person. I became a believer when I talked to him on the phone. Okay, so a lot of you guys have heard this story, but maybe you guys are new to the show, and if so, welcome to the jungle. But one day, Paul was in my garage, and he's talking to Mr. Producer, and I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "It's Mr. Producer." And I'm like, "Man, he is committed to this joke, you know, like this is really funny." Anyway, I had a 2-hour long powwow conversation with Mr. Producer after that, and he's been actually running the show ever since. So, shout out to Paul Jameson with the Green Industry Podcast. If you guys haven't heard Paul's show, you're missing out. Aaron, you're an avid listener of both shows, and you were saying, how many episodes is Paul up to by now?
I see on Instagram yesterday he's up to 444 or 447, somewhere in there, not in the two numbers.
Wow, that's insane. Like that is a commitment. Like that is, I'm impressed. There's another fella out there who creates content all day long for our audience and you guys listening in. That is a crazy commitment. So shout out to Paul. I know he's listening. He's probably poolside right now, kicking those legs up and hanging out, getting a tan. You know what I'm saying, Aaron? So, which is nice. It's always nice seeing how the other side lives. You know what I'm saying? So.
Exactly, you know? One day we're dreaming for those days.
Well, we're
working for.
We're all trying to be a published author and be those 1%ers like Paul. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
we're just being a butt. Paul's a really good friend of mine, and we're hanging with him here in Waco, Texas, here in just a hot minute for our Together in the Trade conference. So, all right, well, let's do this. And the only reason I bring up the podcast is Aaron actually found our content from Paul, so we owe a debt of gratitude to Paul, and a lot of his listeners come our way and join us, and then hopefully they stick around. You know what I'm saying? We're not as polished as the Green Industry Podcast over here, right? So any which way, but let's go to your startup story. You said you have been in business, I think, for 5 years and full time for 3. So if you can, you've heard our podcast and Paul's podcast. We call it your origin story, right?
Right.
Like you're this awesome, fictitious Marvel character, right? Like we need the X-Men origins story. So let's go over here for Wolverine with his origin story. Let's take it all the way back to the beginning. How did you get started in the green industry and starting a lawn and landscaping business of your own?
So it started off, I worked a full-time job at a tire factory called Continental Tire, General Tire. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of them brand of tires.
Yep.
And I've been working, I started there when I was 20 years old, started there as, a way, I was going to get married, as a way to bring an income. It provided good insurance. It seemed like really good pay. Well, as the years went on, it just kind of, it wasn't quite what it needed to be. The insurance was phenomenal, but the pay just didn't seem like it cut it every week. It's allowing my wife to stay home.
Okay.
And so we always had dinner at my mom's every Monday night, and we were discussing, maybe I could start offering to mow some yards, to bring an extra income, and to kind of go back. My lawn care didn't start off as 10-year-old kid out push mowing yards for people. I did mow my parents' yard of 2 acres, and we had to push mow it.
Oh man.
God bless my parents. When I moved out, they got a riding mower.
Oh gosh.
Their main help was gone.
Right.
But when I turned 16, my parents were going to buy me a vehicle. It's kind of like a side story to the main story.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to buy my first vehicle. Nothing fancy, just a vehicle they could afford. It was a blessing. And I told them I wanted a truck. I wanted to mow yards. I guess you could say that's where it originally started. They bought me a 2-door hatchback Ford Escort. So the lawn care business did not take off. There's maybe a reason for it. The Lord had a reason that I didn't see coming, because lawn care then was off of my brain until 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago.
Sure.
We put out an ad on Facebook Market Swap looking for yards to mow. I had no trailer technically. I had a 4-door Chrysler Sebring, and I had a riding lawn tractor that I mowed my own personal yard with. But I had nothing else. And so I put it on an ad, told my wife, all right, here we go. It's starting. I didn't know what my name was going to be. I had no idea of business name. I went after someone tagged me in a post on Facebook. Someone was looking for lawn care, so I threw my name out there real quick, and off the top of my head, I'm like Aaron's Lawn Care. I thought about it real hard, real quick, about 0.5 seconds.
Sure.
Pretty original. And I went and looked at that yard. I don't think I got it because it was, I don't know if I wasn't cheap enough, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I still wasn't cheap enough or something. I'm not sure to that date. But I ended up picking up a yard, or I got a call about it. I went and looked at it, and I gave him a price. And all I had was my riding tractor. And so I waited. I didn't know this guy worked midnights. And so I kept waiting. And I did what you guys recommend shouldn't be done. And I agree with it. Don't buy equipment, especially financing it, if you don't have yards yet. Well, I guess you could say I stepped out on a leap of faith. Now, I didn't go fancy. I went with a Skag Liberty Z. I financed one, 0% finance. It's great. But at the same time, I had no yards. And so then I hadn't heard back from this client that I had given an estimate to. So I was like, hey, I have a zero-turn mower now. I can do it for this price. So I lowered the price $15. That was not smart.
Sure.
I got it. But I hadn't heard back from the gentleman because he was working midnight, busy guy. So we hadn't crossed paths.
Okay.
I still have that yard to this day. They have moved since then, but I followed them. So I still have my very first client of 5 years, trying to land this story to kind of continue forward. So I did that for about 1.5 years, 2 years, decided I wanted to go full time. I knew I could do it. I'd watched you on YouTube. I've watched Top Notch on YouTube. Trying to think of other YouTubers I've watched. I was kind of past the Greg Chisholm era, Greek Freak, but I was watching all the YouTube, and I was like, I know I can do this. I know it's there. And so I talked to my pastor about it. I was like, hey, I want to go full time. He was like, all right. He goes, at that time I was mowing 17 yards a week. 3 of them was for free. 1 was my own, and 1 was my church, and 1 was my pastor's yard.
Okay.
So I don't charge them. I don't, you can do as you want, but as my own personal church, I didn't want to charge them. To this day, I still don't. So we prayed about it, and around that time we had what they call a missions conference. And during the Sunday morning service, we were sitting there, and the minister was preaching. It was a missionary, evangelist preacher, and he was talking about faith and giving in faith and things like that. And it was like what he said kind of lined up with it. But at the end of his sermon, he's like, it spoke to me immediately. He goes, someone here is wanting to start their own business. They just need to step out in faith and do it. And the next words out of his mouth was, all right, everyone please stand, our musicians come. And like immediately I was like, wow, he's talking to me. He's telling me, like in my head, I'm going, no one else that I know of is looking to start a business.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it. And like my mom came up to me after that. I had several people come up to me that knew I was wanting to start a business and go, he was talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I worked my last day at Continental Tire, I went from 17 yards. The previous year before, I had 34 accounts, which was 9 more than what my pastor asked for to go full time.
Wow.
I was working with Home Advisor. I don't recommend that all the time, but it definitely got me started.
Okay.
Home Advisor can be pricey. Angie's List is, I think, another name for it because of the way they charge for leads.
Yeah.
I worked with them for a year. After the first year, I had about 43 accounts. So that was 2019. And then 2020, of course, COVID came in with a very heavy vengeance. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I wasn't sure if we were going to work because we live in a not great state of Illinois.
If you guys could say whatever you want on the show, man. Like it's unfiltered. Like by the way, if you differ with like what somebody else says on the show, relax. Like next time you get to be on the podcast, you can say whatever you want. You know what I mean? But it's unfiltered. So if you're like, yeah, hey, I hate my governor. Okay, you hate your governor. And like, somebody might like your governor. Who cares? You know what I'm saying, guys? Like we're mature here. Like for me, I hate my governor. Other people, they love her. So God bless. But you guys,
I'm a fan of ours.
Yeah, you guys had some lockdowns just like we did in Illinois and Michigan, and it was a wild card, wasn't it?
It was, and I wasn't sure. And so what I did, the only thing I knew how to do is I called my local Williamson County. I live in Williamson County.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my county sheriff department. I go, hey, I run a lawn care business. This is my business name. Are we allowed to work? And the lady I talked to said, you are an essential worker. You are free to work.
Mm.
She goes, I could. And now to this day, I don't know if that was information she knew from the governor, from up higher office, or she was just meaning, you're an essential. Lawn care is essential. It needs to be done. It can't be not done.
Mm-hmm.
So I went forward with that. And so I went from about 43 accounts in 2019, not knowing what COVID was going to hold. We don't live in a very big city. Our biggest city is the Marion, which the main city I work out of is about 18,000 people.
Okay.
It's more rural area of the state.
Yeah. Yeah.
If people think of Illinois, you think of Chicago. It's like, no, we're from Southern Illinois.
Yeah, that's cornfield, beanfield, cornfield house territory,
Exactly.
And then the following year, it's beanfield, cornfield, beanfield house because you guys crop rotate. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly, you have to do that exactly. And so, here's another thing. So I've heard it on a few of your podcasts. People that say they're from Southern Illinois. This is a nitpick of mine. Belleville and O'Fallon is not Southern Illinois.
Okay.
That's like an hour and a half north. So it's just kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Are you over by Alex Nickens area? Like, do you know Alex Nickens on the internet?
I do know. I know who Alex Nickens is, but he is an hour and a half north of me. He is closer to St. Louis than he is to me.
Oh, okay.
So, unless he's farther east. I'm not sure how far east he is, but I think he's near Belleville, ain't he?
Well, I honestly, I don't know what city he lives in, but I know he's like he's a country boy anyway. But he's got that kind of like not like nasally Illinois, but he's got that going on just a little bit. And I'm like, he's like right between like redneck and city guy. You know what I mean? So it's like
he's like the borderline, like. He was like, I get you could say up that far north is Southern Illinois, but in reality, really, it's like about 30, 40 miles north of me is about where that line kind of cuts off. You got a lot of country up in the middle of state Illinois. Middle of Illinois is kind of flat, a lot of corn and bean fields up there.
Yeah. Well, I've driven from Michigan to Iowa, and it's crazy how much farmland is out there. And I'm sure I cut through somewhere 90-94 or something swooped west and 80 or something like that. And it's wide open, man. If you guys have never driven through the Plain States from Illinois to Iowa, I mean, like, and a couple of those other states around, it's actually pretty like peaceful. It's pretty serene. You just see like 100-acre farms after 100-acre farms, if not 1,000-acre farms. And it's just crazy. Like I really have come to appreciate and respect those people that farm, and it's crazy like what those guys do and have to put up with to feed this country. So you guys have this like sort of like Hatfield McCoy like little territory dispute, huh? So
I guess you could say that, yeah. I mean, some people probably wouldn't agree, but it's like every time I've heard, I think it's like one or two times I've heard it, and whether it's on your podcast or someone else, there's Southern Illinois. It's like, no, I know where that's at. That's not Southern Illinois.
Right.
But I'll let you live your dream. You are free to say what you want in the end. So
well, it's funny. Up here we're in Metro Detroit, so we're in the burbs. But we went and hung out with Stanley Dirt Monkey, and this is similar but different. Like I don't really consider myself like a city person. I'm in the burbs. Right. But we went and hung out with the Dirt Monkey, myself, Keith Kalfas, and his wife, and my wife, and had like just a little two-day getaway. It was nothing crazy, nothing planned, just kind of like 2-3 day trip. And like we went through the woods, and we're riding 4-wheelers, and Keith Kalfas and I are like, we have no idea how any of this stuff works. He's like, do you guys know how to launch a boat? I'm like, yeah, dude, we know how to launch a boat, but it was kind of like the extent of all we really knew how to do. And he used a term I had never heard before. And I don't know, Aaron, I'll ask you this. Have you ever heard this term called a cidiot? You ever heard the word cidiot before?
Never heard it said. Yeah. Never heard it said to anyone, but I guess.
Well,
I don't know where it's going though.
Well, yeah, I mean the writing's on the wall on this one. Stanley looked at Kalfas and I when we were riding his 4-wheelers, and these 4-wheelers are like 15 and 20 years old, right? Like it's like a Honda 300 or something like that.
Oh, that's old.
Yeah, dude, 15, 20 years old, right? And so I jump on one of them, and Kalfas jumps on like a Honda 400, something like that. I don't even know. Yeah. And we both look at each other and we go, well, how does it like shift? Or like, do you need to shift it? And he like looks at us. He's like, yeah. He's like, it's got a clutch, and we're like, what? We literally both go like, what's a clutch? And he goes, Jesus Christ, you guys are a bunch of idiots. And we're like, we look at each other, even like, we weren't sure if we should be more offended now, right? We're like, well, what's a city? And I mean, if you guys ever see Stanley in real life, he is 100% who you see on YouTube in real life. He is as choleric Midwestern dad, and like if you're an idiot, he's gonna call you out. He's like, are you? So I don't know, like you guys are out there, you know, you're not country folk, you're not redneck, but I don't know if you guys are city idiots. We're a city idiot. I don't know. It's just I don't know how I got on that rant, but it just made me think of Stanley Dirt Monkey and people living in the country. You know what I'm saying? So
right. I mean, you would call us country to an extent, not like pure country.
Yeah.
But we're it's 6 miles in between towns.
Yeah.
And you can get into, when you get away from the main Interstate 57, which runs through the majority of Illinois.
Okay.
You can get into some pretty spread out areas. I try to keep my route in a 15-mile radius. So I guess it's 30 miles figuratively if you go from end to end. But at the same time, I almost keep it tighter than that.
Okay.
Like I have a city where my dealer's at for my mowers. I run Skag mowers.
Yeah.
There's multiple Skag dealers. Skag's big around where we live, and there's multiple Skag dealers, but this one's the best one, and it's Ben's Lawn Service. So if anyone that listens that knows Southern Illinois, knows Marion, knows Benton, Illinois, Ben's is the best Skag dealer around.
Okay.
He's 12 miles north of me, but I don't mow any properties in that area just because it's not really, it's like it's out of my way, but to get started, you have to mow that one, then hope you get another, and it's not like it's a subdivision, it's just cities.
Right.
So you don't have like a subdivision where you can target, there's a lot of good homes in there. And I've mowed a few yards up there a couple times, but I always get rid of them because I just have no success.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mainly focus in 3 little areas, they're 6 miles from each other, and I stay pretty busy with those. And so I don't reach far out, even though I'm kind of in a country-ish area.
Yeah. And that's super smart. I get a lot of folks that listen to the podcast, and they're not in the burbs. There's not subdivisions. There's not the nicer subdivisions. It's more rural, and lawns burn up, they dry up. They're, 2 to 3 acre lots. And, it's all fun and, games until like end of June. And then, 8 weeks, it's kind of like every other week ish, and it kind of comes back in September once the rain returns. But yeah, that's always a pickle. I'm like, that's a tough one. Like, find irrigated lawns or diversify a little bit into landscaping or, some mid-season pruning or here's a tip, take a nap once in a while. Cause, we all go so hard,
right.
What was the name of the dealer? If you want to give them a shout out, little plug again, it was Benton.
It's Ben's Lawn Service in Benton, Illinois.
Okay. Ben Services. Okay.
Yeah. Ben's Lawn Service. He used to run a lawn care business himself, and then he's graduated into owning a business, selling mowers. They sell Skag, Hustler.
Oh, cool.
And then they, you can rent trailers. They have Bobcats you can rent. They sell trailers. Phenomenal dealer in the area. And they're really good, which is really huge, is if a mower goes down, they will give you a mower to use until you get yours back.
Okay, cool. Like a zero downtime thing.
Exactly. And normally it's a day or two. Sometimes, like today was a rain day, you're not making any money on a rain day technically. I had to spend money because I had to fix a mower tire that had 3 holes in the sidewall.
Oh, yeah.
So mower tires aren't cheap.
Right.
So I spent money. I had to go up there today just to instead of the tire wasn't bad holes, just enough to where you had to air it up every morning, and then it would go throughout the day and you'd be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just tired of airing that tire up every single morning so I could mow yards.
Hey man, they're definitely expensive when you put the lug nuts on, the incorrect way. So that'll cost you $650.
That was hilarious. Hilarious.
Hey, who would have thought? Taper side in if you guys are listening in on those lug nuts. But
I thought it was common sense, to be honest.
Again, I'm a city bro. I'm a city and
I guess so.
and I think I had made that mistake before I went to hang out with Stan. So I was kind of proving him right. But let me ask you this. It's funny you were talking about your story with your pastor and the conference, and I do remember that story now from Paul Jameson's podcast. And so we were talking before we hit record that, Paul's got so many great episodes out there. It's like he's got daily content. And so if you guys are listening to him and you guys want some motivation daily, definitely check out the Green Industry Podcast. And we were talking about there's Britt Dowd and Corey Ballard and Julia, Lawn Care Business Success, Lawn Care Leaders Podcast. There's so many great podcasts out there in the industry that just didn't exist, 2 to 3 years ago, let alone
Right.
5 and 10 years ago. Let me ask you this. You and I, we got to bump into each other at GIE, I think 2009. 2019.
First time ever being at GIE.
Yeah, I think that was my second year, if I'm not mistaken. So I looked like I knew what I was doing, but only because the first year I was walking around like a deer in the headlights. Well, let me ask you this: you like you said, you didn't get started as a 10-year-old neighborhood kid. You were coming in hot. You had to learn. You were just digesting all this info from the podcast and Top Notch on YouTube and all these good people. What was some of the biggest things that you were looking for, and what was some of the stuff that you were watching back when you were getting started? Like what was the most helpful content for you when you were trying to launch this lawn care business?
To be honest, I really was heavy on Top Notch at the time. He was like the first person that I found. He was very, at that time, he had that big, I think it was like I don't know if it was like a condo area or something. He had it took him like 2 days. I think it was like 70 houses, maybe not exactly on that number, but I remember watching, he put a can of gas, a 2-cycle at one end of the sidewalk that was 100 yards long, and he would weed it all the way down the front side, doing everything on the front side. And time he got to the end, he would fill up and then go down the other side of the street and do everything on the front side. Right. And so it was just learning how to set things up. I was learning how, striping is not necessarily something you learn. It's kind of like, it's almost easy, I guess you would say. Striping is the easy part of lawn care, but at the same time, it's a finesse of how to mow a yard, how to approach it. I came at it. I mean, I knew how to mow. I just didn't know how, I didn't know what the profession exactly. I lost my train of thought.
Well, you're like the workflow to mow a lawn. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know, the way to approach it. How do you do certain things? I didn't blow off my mom and dad's yard when I mowed when I was younger. I didn't mow when I mowed my personal yard. I didn't blow it off. I didn't know any better. I don't think I even owned a blower,
Right.
But, when I started, I was watching him, he had a weed eater, he had a blower. So I just go out and purchase a blower. I went not cheap, but I found a blower for my pastor ended up finding it. It was a Walmart special. It was originally $100. It was on sale for $100 or something like that. Mm-hmm. It lasted 3 months.
Which isn't too bad. Too bad,
Too bad.
From Walmart?
I think, it wasn't too bad, I guess. So I'm glad I didn't pay full price for it. And then the following season, I run Red Max equipment is what I run.
Oh, okay.
So I started stepping up then.
Yeah. Are you still running Red Max now, or what do you use for all your hand tools?
I am. Still Red Max, except for one piece of steel equipment that my church bought for me as a gift for not charging them to mow the church and my pastor's yard. I don't charge them to mow.
That's cool.
And so commonly around my birthday and Christmas, they commonly get me something. And around my birthday, which is in April, he called me up and goes, "Hey, Rural King runs a. I don't know if you guys have Rural Kings up there. I don't think you do. They're kind of like
funny story. We do. It's a little bit more rural, right? About half hour west of me. That's actually where my guy Rob lives, and but I haven't made it inside one yet. I need to go check that out. Is it like a Harbor Freight, or what? Is it like a farm store, or?
They're kind of like a Tractor Supply. It's a farm store. You have horse feed. You have cattle gates. You can buy stuff outside.
Oh, nice.
It's a lot like a Tractor Supply. I'm trying to think of another, maybe like a northern one.
I get it. Yeah.
And so they do a special during this, I think April-ish. They do a special where whatever you buy there, you take your receipt online and you can add it to the church you go to. And so then they give 10% of that what you spend to the church. No questions asked, just something they do.
Oh, wow.
And so they wanted to take advantage of it. So I would have preferred a Red Max something, but it was the Royal Kings only sell steel.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
when it comes to the commercial. And so I didn't have an edger yet. I was the string edger kind of guy. But I've been wanting to get a hard stick edger. And so that's what I went with. But everything else is Red Max. I have 2 Red Max weed eaters. I have off of the blower, I have the 8550.
Yeah.
And then I got the handheld, I think it's like 280S, which is technically their residential model handheld blower. But for the price, if you wear it out after 2 or 3 years, it's cheaper than paying for the commercial, which could last the same amount.
Okay.
So it's definitely Red Max, though. I love my Red Max, even though it's terrible with cold weather.
Yeah. They take sometimes a minute to get started in the winter. What whips are you using? What weed whips are you using? Do you know the number?
I'm using the CZ3060 TS, so it's the bigger. That's the main one I run.
Okay.
3060, and then the smaller one off the top of my head, I cannot think of the number.
Is it the 260 maybe?
I think so. Yeah, it's the smallest of their weed eaters they sell. It's kind of like my backup. I use it for yards.
Yeah.
That I don't have a lot of weed eating to do. I'm only 6'1", but I have a terrible back. And so I run Darwin's grip all the time, except for on that small one. I use it. I can weed eat one hand with that weed eater, because it's so light.
Yeah.
But I use it for like my smaller yards that I have 2 minutes of weed eating. It ain't worth getting the technically heavier weed eater out to, for 2 minutes of weed eating when I can get the smaller one real easy.
Well, I feel you there. I used to use the I forget which Red Max it is, but it's the one with like the clutch box. It's like a plastic instead of that steel. So it's a dark gray. And it's like their lightweight one. It was like 11.1 pounds. That weed whip was awesome. I used to just go through those because they were just light. They were, I don't know, $250 to $300, and we used to go through those like crazy,
They're
yeah.
very efficient.
The Red Max go-to that I always used was the 260 TS. After that, I like my Red Max trimmers and blowers. I just feel like the build quality of the engines on the trimmer don't last as long as some of my Echoes. So a lot of people always ask me, Aaron, like, hey, what's the best trimmer and blower and edger? Are they all Red Max or all steel? And I'm like, not really. Like I kind of cherry pick the brands. Right. But I love my Red Max blowers, and I'm glad to hear that you guys have some Red Max out by you, because a lot of folks don't even have Red Max. And I'm like, and not that I'm like ultra loyal to one brand, but I'm like, how have you guys not ran Red Max? Everybody's a Steel or Echo fanboy. And I'm like, there's a third option out there,
I'm not anti-steel. I'm just not a big fan of steel. Steel's always been heavier, especially when it comes to weed eaters.
Yeah. I had a
steel weed eater that my church had when I was knowing the church before I technically was a business. Just there were several of us that would kind of rotate. My dad had taken care of it at one point, and they had a weed eater, a steel weed eater, and it was nice, but it was so heavy, and it was like to fix parts on it. If you had to fix it, steel was really high on their replacement parts. Oh my goodness. I had to replace a fuel line on it once, and it was like $8 for the fuel line. I'm like, and at the time I already had a Red Max weed eater. I could go to a local, like a little lawn and tractor, store and get, tubing for like 50 cents. And then, it was like, 2 inches of tube. That's all I needed. And it was 50 cents where still you had to buy it was like a whole attachment, at least on that one. Now it may have changed. I don't know. I haven't even checked out this newer steel that I have. I have the KM 111 edge head, and then it's the combi system.
Yeah.
So I haven't. It's I've only had it for 2 months, so I haven't checked to see what the fuel line looks like. They do change things. I understand that. That was the older steel model.
Right.
So I wasn't. The steel is common around here. Steel is a very common piece of equipment. It's sold at several places, and then of course Echo, which kind of connects with Home Depot.
Yeah.
Or as I say, Home Depot. And I say that because I used to work at Menards. I know you guys have Menards up that way.
Yeah. I never got into going to Menards. I just I one time I went there, I bought like $250 worth of crap, and they were like, oh, it's the 11% rebate. And I'm like,
I never was a fan of that though.
I'm like, I hate that. I'm like, dude, nobody's going to fill out your stupid rebate. Like, that's why you offer it, because nobody's going to return it. And They're like, oh, it's 11% off, like compared to the competition. And I'm like, dude, I ain't filling out no stupid rebate. Nobody listening is filling out a rebate. We don't have time for that. And that's how they get you. And so I'm like, you know what? If Home Depot is 10% off and you're 11% off, like I'm going to Home Depot because at least I know, and you guys know how it goes out there. But I that's always turned me off. And then they were like forcing kids to wear masks, but that's a whole other story. I was like, yeah, if you were. No, if you were like 12 or something, like or younger, they were like mandating that. I'm like, they're kids. But anyway, you know, I think
that's a whole other story. We're going off track a little bit.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. So now that you've been a few years in business, you're full time. You know, we'll probably button this thing up here in just a couple quick minutes. But where are you guys at today? And are you? I saw on your Instagram you got 2 Skag V-Ride 2s. It looks like. I mean, it seems like business is growing and business is booming. So what are you guys looking like today? What's the operation today?
So it started with 2020 with the COVID. That's when I bought my Skags. I probably did what some people are probably nervous to do is I made a big investment in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
But I guess you could say I took a faith knowing the business was going to grow. At the same time, I wasn't sure, but I peaked out about 65 clients as a solo guy. Not all weeklies. You know, we live in a rural, so it's I run into bi-weeklies quite often.
Okay.
Not a fan of them, but I try to push weekly, but you can't push too hard. Otherwise, you just may not get work at all. So
right.
It's not too bad, but there's times I hate biweeklies. But anyway, so I did that. I had about 60, 65, and the same for this year. I started off fairly the same. I have 60 to 65. I've lost some here and there. Apparently, this year is going to be the year for houses going on the market, as I currently have 7 clients with their houses on the market.
Oh yeah.
Now I did pick up 2. Knowing that they was going to go for sale. So I guess you could say I only have 5.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Last year, none of them sold. I had no houses on the market. And this year, I've had 7. I've been dropped 3 times. People with lower prices. I had a client text me this past Friday, go, hey, thank you. She was very nice, very sweet with her comments, but it's like, I found someone much lower. And it's like, I kind of seen that one coming, it wasn't a surprise. But it put me in a pickle because it's in one of my far stretched areas that I had 2 properties in so now I'm down to 1 down there. But this one client is phenomenal. This one client, when I send the monthly invoice, will have it paid before I can send the next client their monthly invoice.
Sure.
And so, because I use Yardbook, and so they can pay online, with a card. And it literally in 2 minutes, the time it took me to create another invoice, for another client, I go back to create another one, and this client's already paid. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the house property, so I can swim there. But it's put me in a pickle now, losing a yard, down there.
Right.
But we'll just, base it off. I'll have to decide. I ain't going to cut the client off, in the middle of the season. Clients tend to do that to us. They'll cut us off. You mow 1 week, and the next week, hey, we got someone else. You could have given me to the end of the month. I would have greatly appreciated, the end of the month, not just, now you were here and now you're gone type, mentality.
Right.
But it's I'm taking it one step at a time. I've definitely had more landscaping jobs this year. I do a lot of brush removal, like shrubs. I'll take shrubs out of the ground.
Okay.
And it's something, and thanks to Kibler Lawn Care, I think he won that mower down in Florida, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think it was Kibler. I was getting ready to do a shrub removal job, take some shrubs out of the ground, and I have my pastor's son helped me. He's 15. He helps me a couple days a week. And so just kind of getting him in the swing of learning the work. And so I was waiting for him to come out of his house, and I jumped on Instagram for a split second and seen Kibler had posted a video of using a Sawzall to cut around the outside of a shrub, so many inches, like 8 to 10 inches out from the shrub, just cut into the ground. And then you can just pull the roots up, pull the plant or whatever you're taking out of the ground. I was like, I have a Sawzall. I think I'll work. So
right.
The first job I went to, it was a little bit harder because the shrubs I was removing been in the ground for a long time. It was taking a little more work, but I cut around them and I hooked a chain to them, used my truck, and I barely pulled and just come out of the ground. I go, oh, that just saved me 30 minutes of digging around that stump.
Oh, sure.
To get it out.
Right.
It saved me. I took out 6 stumps in like an hour and a half, and that includes cutting clearing all the brush out to get down to the stump. I was like, oh, this is a lifesaver.
Have you ever seen Kalfas do that on YouTube?
I haven't, but I think that's what Kibler was referring to. I think he said he had seen it. So it was one of those things.
I think so, because I saw Bronson's post on Instagram, and shout out to Kibler, because he listens to the show. And it was really cool meeting him and his wife down there in Tampa area. But yeah, Kalfas, if you guys have never watched Kalfas, Kalfas is crazy, but Kalfas is like, he's another fellow idiot out there. And I say that with love. Me and Kalfas, Keith Kalfas on YouTube, we're really good buds. Kalfas, I don't know where he learned it, but he takes a Sawzall, and like Aaron was just saying, he goes around the base of a shrub or a plant, like at an angle, kind of like when you're carving a pumpkin top. He'll taper it in, make this cone, and then literally he just pulls the whole root ball right out. For anything that's got a 20 or 30 pound root ball or smaller, nothing super crazy.
You get no tree out of the ground like that.
yeah. I mean, like one time we pulled a huge arborvitae out of my mom's house, and that would have been like the way to do it. So that technique is really, people are like, oh, you're gonna go through some saw blades. Well, they're like $5-10. Like, who cares? Versus
better than manual labor, because then when I say manual labor, and I know someone's gonna come at me and go, oh, you're just lazy. No, you try and take out a stump if it's like 85, 90 degrees, that is brutal. Like you think you get it, you go to yank it, and it's still not coming out. So then you're digging again, trying to find that one root. And it seems like and this may not work on all shrubs, but I pulled out 13 that day.
Oh, wow.
And I guarantee it saved me 3.5, 4 hours of labor of not having to sit there and just dig and dig and dig.
What did you charge to rip those out, if you don't mind me asking?
For the first one, I did with two different clients. One was for a restaurant that the original bid for the job, was $1,000, $1,050.
Okay.
I got into it and realized that the job, whoever installed these plants, what I was assuming was 14 to 16 stumps.
Okay.
Was going to be in there. It was evergreen, like cedar bushes. It was looking about 20 to 25. They planted them really close. So I called the client the following Monday and said, hey, the price is going to go up. I don't mind telling prices. It's not a big deal. That way I can learn if I'm too high, too low. It's kind of a way, if someone's listening, like, hey, I would try and charge this. I told them $1,750. And so for the first job, for the first 6 stumps I pulled out, I took that $1,750, I divided it by 3 because I'm going to plan on doing it in 3 sections.
Sure.
That's about, I charged them $583 for 6 stumps to come out of the ground.
Okay.
And that took me about 2.5, 3 hours of work.
Wow.
And then the other job that had another 6 took me an hour and a half, and I charged the lady $300.
That's not bad.
And they were very simple. It took long. I think it almost took more time trying to hook up to. I had my dump trailer. I bought a dump trailer from Texas Pride Trailers.
Okay.
And I would hook a strap to the back end of it once I cut around it, and then pull it out very simply.
Right.
So it wasn't too hard at all. But sharp blades make a difference with the cutting the ground, just future reference.
Funny story, because I have a video out there back in the day when I pulled two what were they, dwarf spruces, if I'm not mistaken. And Austin from Ditch the Itch will really appreciate my plant knowledge, by the way, Austin, if he's listening to the show. Because you guys all give me crap because I call everything a maple tree or a rhododendron, which is true. Because I don't know my trees and my plants. I know my shrubs pretty well.
I'm great at it.
So we pulled out 2 little dwarf spruces in front of the 2 edges of a garage door in the driveway, and we charged like $300, and it took us 2 hours and maybe not even hour and a half. And I have a video out there on YouTube, and people are like, oh my god, you guys charge $300 to remove those? Like, what a scam. And I'm like, dude, we had to like saw around all the hatchet out all the roots, and we tied it up with the truck, and we were doing our best to pull it all out. And I'm like, yeah, like we have like these F-250 trucks, and it's not crazy rates, but I'm always just curious what you guys are charging, because I get calls like that all the time, or down trees, and I'm like, it's good money, but I'm just like, sometimes it turns into Pandora's box. If you get in there and you're like, I don't know what's going on,
Yeah. And see, what I've run into with this, the big cedar evergreen shrub that I'm removing, commonly if you get like a shrub, it's 5, 10, 20, 30 feet long.
Mhm.
Once you make the initial cut into it, you can just go through and just easily, the guy, whoever, if you have someone helping you, they can't keep up with you throwing out the limbs because
Sure.
you have, it opens up the bush. Well, I discovered with this one, they were too close. Who knows how long they've been there. They're intertwined. So once even though you open it up, you still have to dig. It's not as easy. So and the client understood that. And so they were they were happy with the price. Someone say, well, maybe you're too low. For 3 hours of work, $583, that's not too bad. And I'll be quicker next time because now I know I'm getting into. I wasn't sure what I was getting into when I first opened it. I could see it from the outside, but once starting it, I realized, okay, now I know how to approach it next time when I go.
Right.
And the client's not too big concerned because they're still dealing with our great Illinois restrictions with COVID and all. Our governor, we're still kind of wonky, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not open. They haven't had the greatest income this year. We're still not full capacity. I think we're half at this point. I think I've lost track. I think we're in phase 4 of like the 17th or 30th thousandth. I don't know. I've lost track. We keep going forward and backwards.
I don't even know where we're at right now with Michigan. We're level 5, then we're level 4, then we're level 3, 3.5,
Yeah.
but 3.5. But then you have to have the card and mask and no mask. I don't know, man. I just walk around.
I think we're at bridge phase now. I think, to be honest, our governor's so great. If anyone's listening and knows our governor, we have 5 phases. We were at 4, and we were to go to 5. All of a sudden, they came up with a bridge phase between 4 and 5. I was like, oh,
what is that?
So this is like when you're counting your kids. You're going to get in trouble. You're like 1, 2, 2.1, 2 point. I feel like our governor's treating us, like we're their kids.
Oh yeah.
And they're just slowly increasing it.
I just don't understand how elected politicians and officials can act like this. I'm like, don't you think they'd have some more like formality and structure? And I don't care what side you're on. If you guys are listening to the show, like I'm an equal opportunity offender. Okay, like both sides are stupid. And so our governor, it's like she's like, if you don't get to 60% vaccination, we're not opening up the state. I'm like, I thought we were free first. I mean, I'm not a constitutional scholar over here, but I'm not David Barton from Wall Builders, but I'm pretty sure that we were free people first, and I don't get my freedoms back. That should be something that both sides agree on. But
I agree.
But here we are. You know what I'm saying, Aaron? It's
one of those things. We just can't go about it. I just jump on my Skag V-Ride every day, and I try not to focus on the news, and I mow my yards from day to day.
Amen.
And I just look to grow the business every week. So trying to do what I can.
Well, we're 18 months into just 2 weeks. Amen. So anyway,
just 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks. We'll round out. We'll round out the curve at 2 weeks.
I love it. Well, but I think you said 2 years there. But anyway, hey, let's do this. You and I literally think we would talk all day for real. And I enjoy the conversations I have with you guys. But just to respect the schedule and the calendar and then everything that you guys are listening to, we'll just kind of land the plane here. And but here's what I was going to mention is that you have another episode that you did with Paul Jameson on the Green Industry podcast. So
correct.
If people want to hear more of your story and even connect with you on social media, there's another 45 minutes to an hour that I know Paul has at least 1 or 2 episodes on yourself. Do you happen to know what episode that number was or no?
It was roughly in the 150s to 200s. I'm not exactly sure. It was roughly around this same time last year.
Yeah.
So you can kind of base it off of his 5 episodes, a week that he's putting out 5, 6, if you count the Sunday service.
Yeah.
But it was around the 150. When this episode comes out, I will, before then, like when you release it, I'm sure I'll probably post it on my Instagram.
Yeah.
I will make sure and comment or tag, whatever. I'll look it up and try and find what episode it was to get it for sure.
Yeah,
that way I know exactly for sure.
Mr. Producer, most likely he's already ahead of us. He'll probably plug it in the show notes. He's incredible. Paul's always giving him crap for because he's not very not the cheapest producer, right? But it's all relative because you get what you pay for. You know what I mean? And
right.
and I don't know what Paul's complaining about, man. He's living the dream. I mean, he's in Sarasota, Florida one day. He's in the Midwest the next day. He's living the dream. He's got the PJ, and we're over here slumming it in my garage with some sound panels and some plywood. So
But you got a nice setup. In reality, I like the videos I've seen of it. Looks pretty nice, for what you're able to get to do. Working with what you have.
Hey, and that's I'm just trying to be resourceful over here. We're just having fun. My biggest commitment to you guys with the podcast is just bringing you quality content, and just making sure that it's loud enough to hear over the lawnmowers. Can I get an amen? Like,
Amen.
Paul and I, we talk about this all the time. Like, if you're going to make a podcast out there, awesome. Like, welcome to the jungle. We'll help promote yours too. Just make sure the freaking volume is loud enough. I get so frustrated with so many other great podcasts outside of the lawn care industry. Obviously, I listen to other content just besides cutting lawns all day, right? Like you guys. And I can't even hear their podcast. I mean, half the time I can't even hear Gary Vee. And like, crank it up, man. Like I keep telling everybody, I'm like, you need to go with Mr. Producer. He's the best in the biz, as Paul Jamison says. So, well, let's do this. Aaron, you listen to Paul Jamison's podcast, right? We gotta segue, right? We gotta transition as we button this thing up, right? So, let's do this. Where can people find you on social media? And then I'm gonna leave it up to you to segue to Mr. Producer to see if you got any game as good or better than Paul Jamison. You think you can button this one up?
That is putting the pressure on right there. That's putting the pressure on.
You got it.
One thing before I tell my socials, I wanted to kind of say this because it was on my mind. I wanted to, congratulations on the baby girl you got coming.
Hey, thanks, man.
I know.
Thank you.
With everything that had happened, when you talked about Launchpreneur, with the miscarriage, me dealing, my wife and I dealt with that as well. And so, I remember messaging you. Hey, after every storm comes a rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then, I was privileged. I don't know how many people knew before you announced it, but you let me know. And I was like, the joy in my heart, knowing that you was going to be able, that you guys were going to have your first baby was just news, a brightening in my spirit in itself. Cause, it crushed me, it's not something guys don't always admit that.
Right.
But it was crushing to me, like I told you before we went live, before we started recording, that when I listened to that on the podcast, on the episode you did, when you released the talk from Launchpreneur, I literally had tears in my eyes and had trying not to lose my composure on a job site. I literally had to stop and just kind of kept my sunglasses on. So if anyone just happened to see me, they wouldn't see the glossy eyes. They might see the tears and be like, well, maybe just sweating,
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate that.
It was an emotional thing. So I just wanted to kind of mention that before I mention my social, get my socials and talk about me again.
Yeah, no,
just for a moment.
No, and I appreciate that. And if you guys haven't listened to that episode, we'll see if Marty can plug that one as well. That was probably, gosh, I'm not even going to try. That's probably like 130s, 140s, something like that on our show. But we're trying to catch up to Paul, but he's a machine. I'm not even trying to catch up to Paul anymore. He's already eclipsed us. God bless him, and rightfully so. He's the hardest working guy I know in radio, after Mr. Producer. So any which way, but so where can people find you? And then segue this out to Mr. Producer, man. Give him a shout out, and we're out of here.
All righty. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Aaron's_lawn care. That's the main thing I post on. You can find me on Facebook as well under the personal name Aaron Strunk, or Aaron's Lawn Care is my Facebook business page.
Awesome.
I post more on Instagram, which is connected to Facebook. But that's the best place to find me. I'm thankful for all the followers I do have. The communications, the friends that I've made chatting with on there is just phenomenal. And so it's amazing the community that's out there on social media, and including Mr. Producer. I follow him on Instagram. I haven't seen his picture yet. It could be Paul Jamison running a fourth Instagram as Mr. Producer.
It could be. You're not wrong.
We never know. But all we can do is just, I can tell you thank you. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yes, sir.
And allowing me to tell my story. I did tell it on the green industry, but, it always comes out a different way. You don't say the same thing twice all the time.
Amen.
And so with that note being said, we're going to try and hand it over to Mr. Producer. The pressure is on, and this is the best segue I
have. You guys are awesome, man. You guys always make the show so enjoyable, man. It's not what I have to say. I love listening to your guys' personalities, and we're an eclectic bunch. That's a fact, But
yeah.
But I'll tell you guys what. Thank you to Mr. Producer for holding the fort and bringing the show like you guys were just talking about Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you know what? If you guys need any voiceover work, or you guys want to bug him, or just tag him on Instagram, it's at Mr. Producer USA over there on Instagram. Tag him, tag Paul, and check out the Green Industry Podcast. Paul's got 450 shows almost, and Mr. Producer quarterbacks that show as well. And for sure, we always appreciate you guys, commenting, sharing the shows, leaving those ratings and reviews. You guys are part of the family, and we look forward to potentially hearing your guys' story here on a future episode. So, Aaron, thanks again for joining us on the show, brother. This was awesome, and maybe we'll get a little season update here in about 4 or 5 months towards the end of the year, and get you back on the show. What do you think?
Sounds good to me, especially right there before GIE. Get a recap of how things are going. So
I like it, brother. Well, you going to the GIE this year?
Absolutely. I was crushed last year when we couldn't go.
Amen.
It was going to be my second year, and me and the wife are looking forward to it. That was for sure, one time of vacation we can get, even though it's a hectic time, but it's, for sure one chance we got. So but we're definitely going to be there this year. Not staying in a Red Roof Inn, though. Paul Jameson's advice. No Red Roof Inn.
You're not going to be staying where Paul is. Paul's in the penthouse suite at the Marriott. You know what I mean? He's and I don't even know if he pays for that room anymore. He gets comped. He's a VIP. You and I we're slumming over here, and he's drinking Essentia, and I'm drinking what is this here? Ice Mountain. I get 40-pack for $4.99 at Meijer. You know what I'm saying?
I guess you could say I have fancy water. I have smart water.
Oh yeah.
In my defense, I stole it from my wife because I realized I didn't have any water to start the podcast, and I didn't want to turn the sink on to get tap water. So I asked my wife to do it, and she handed me her bottle of water. Well, and this probably is tap water that was in the bottle. So it's probably not even smart water.
Well, you're wealthy like Paul, who's sitting poolside as he's probably chuckling listening to this and drinking his Essentia, right? So that's
exactly.
As they say in Star Wars Episode 1, there's always a bigger fish. Amen. So all right, guys. Well, we'll button up here. This was Aaron Strunk over here from Marion, I think it is, Illinois, and great job on the podcast, brother. And we will definitely share this on Instagram. And if you guys enjoy the show, we always appreciate the reposts and the share. So let's do this. Let's kick it over to, as my friend Paul says, the best producer in the biz, Marty, Mr. Producer, down in the ATL. Guys, we will catch up with you here on the next one.
Hey gang, it's Marty. Let's talk about how smart Wi-Fi enabled irrigation controllers help improve life. They make system management easier, help homeowners save water, and nowadays more and more customers are wanting remote smart control, meaning it's a good way to continue growing your business. Site One Landscape Supply has a new trade-in special from now right on through June the 30th, where if you bring in any old irrigation controllers to your local Site One branch, you'll receive a 15% discount on a smart Wi-Fi enabled residential irrigation controller from Rainbird, Hunter, or Irritrol. As a part of the Upgrade, Save, Recycle Controller Upgrade program, Site One is partnering with Blue Star Recyclers, a nonprofit dedicated to creating jobs for people with disabilities and keeping electronics out of landfills. Great work. This trade-in special is a fantastic upgrade for your customers, a better upsell for you, and an opportunity to support a nonprofit that is doing impactful work. Visit siteone.com/upgrade and save to see the full list of qualifying controllers, and I'll make sure that link is in the show description.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
This has been a Brian Fullerton and Mr. Producer production.